At this point in time, I am sure everyone has heard of GMOs, or genetically modified organisms. Products of this type of science have sparked many debates in the recent years, and it is a topic that everyone has an opinion on, no matter the extent of their knowledge. For my documentary, I thought it would be interesting to highlight the students on campus and what they had to say about GMOs. In particular, I thought the debate between applied food studies and culinary science students was thrilling. My first question was to ask what a GMO was and to see if my fellow students could give some insight into what these products are. Here were the responses.
So my name is Rebecca Peternell, and I'm in the Applied Food Studies program here.
Okay, so what is a GMO?
A GMO is a genetically modified organism.
All right.
My name is Joseph Masick, Culinary Science.
All right, so what is a GMO?
GMO is a genetically modified organism.
Nathan Salzel.
Are you applied food studies or culinary science?
I'm culinary science.
All right. What is a GMO?
GMO is a genetically modified organism.
As you can see, many of the responses I received were just the acronym. Only one of my interviewees went into detail on what makes a GMO. Let's see what he had to say.
My name is Camden Miller, and I am an applied food studies major.
Okay. What is a GMO?
A GMO is a genetically modified organism. So I think when people usually refer to them, they're talking about direct genetic modification. So going directly into the genetic code of an organism and modifying it. And there's a couple different techniques that are used for that. But then there's also just there's other forms of genetic modification that have been around for, since the Neolithic Revolution 10,000 years ago, since we started agriculture with selective breeding. I mean, that's a form of genetic modification. It's much slower, but it's still, modifying an organism at a genetic level.
Here he was referring to methods of transgenesis and direct genetic modification, and comparing them to methods like human-directed breeding. While the latter is not a scientific method per se, it is a method of controlling traits, such as our methods of breeding a wide-eyed puppy that has been frozen in adolescence, or our methods to domesticate plant species, in order to make them more desirable to our palates. I wanted to see what knowledge my fellow students had on this topic before asking the personal opinion-based questions in order to see how they truly formed these opinions. My follow-up questions were asking if they believed GMOs to be good or bad, if they have the possibility to become better, and if they served a purpose globally.
I think some of them are bad, but there's a lot of GMOs that we probably couldn't be feeding people without them. I think if we stopped creating GMOs just for the purpose of monocropping and used them more to be drought resistant while we worked on fixing climate and soil health and things like that, they are needed at this point in time. I mean, you kind of have to look at it like the chicken we eat is a GMO. So if we didn't have those, we wouldn't be eating chicken. And I'm sure it'd be replaced with something else. But again, if we were just using them for like monocropping, like the corn we have here in the States, I don't think those are needed or good.
I think they have like their time and their place. I think GMOs do a lot of good. Like people who are diabetic, insulin is made from GMOs. So if we didn't have GMOs, people who were diabetic would be in a lot of trouble. So I think there's a time and a place for them. Things like maybe corn maybe don't need GMOs as much as they're prevalent, but I mean, like I said, there's a time and a place for them. Yeah, I think given enough time, anything can really be improved. And I think as we go further into like more technological era, I think anything can be really improved, especially GMOs.
I mean, good or bad? I would like to say good. I think the potential is good. But I think the way we use them is probably more so bad. A lot of GMO use is designed to give plants a resiliency to pesticides, as opposed to the more systemic issue, which would be drought or or the diseases itself. So, I think the way we use them is bad because we use them as a way to sell more pesticides, but there's potential for them to be used in a way that is good. I think they do serve a purpose, especially globally. I mean, I won't say most of the food, but most of the processed food in America, as well as meat, has some kind of GMO in that process. Corn, soy. Most of that is going to animals, and most of what animals eat is genetically modified. I believe, but I'm pretty sure that's right. So, yeah, I would say they're used globally.
Most of the culinary science and applied food studies students had the same opinions that GMOs can be used for good if placed in the right hands. However, I did have one student who differed a little bit from the rest.
I definitely think they're good. They've had some bad in the past with like Monsanto kind of taking advantage of them with their Roundup Ready crops. But I think overall they're definitely good. They bring a lot of food to places that don't have access to good food. It saves crops from like going extinct, like papaya. You wouldn't have any of that without GMOs. And I guess it just allows more food to be produced so we can get it to more people, which is definitely something we need. Also, like with GMOs, you can make crops more resistant to things. So therefore, like you don't need to worry about weather or things like that as much, which is definitely helpful for feeding a lot of people.
If you recall, an applied food studies student, Camden, had previously mentioned that there is a disconnect in the use of our GMOs. While we have now bred GMO crops to be more resistant to our weather conditions that have been much affected by global warming, there are not many actions towards trying to reduce our footprint we have caused and to try and revert the earth back to what it once was for growing crops. Now, for our other student, Nathan, growing per the conditions of today's weather seems to be more important. This made me curious. I am beginning to think that there aren't as many differences in the opinions of our two majors, but the reasons in which we have them, and this could be the same for some students in AFS. I just haven't come across them. But maybe the question should be, is it more important for people to be fed or to be sustainable in our farming practices?